What up, Marsh Pod? Big night of SimWorld Hoops. The regular season almost done. Atlantis does not appear that they want to make a playoff run. 4 straight losses now, 2 heartbreaking ones. Yacht Club, meanwhile, 6 straight wins, and a quick tidbit on DMV. Let's go. All right, big night in hoops. Last night, SimWorld TV triple header. Run DMV loses. Bay Area loses. Atlantis loses. Two of those three things it feels like no one wants to talk about. We're going to talk about one of them. It's going to be Atlantis, except that's one they are talking about, I guess. But anyway, it seems like they just don't want to make the playoffs. 4 straight losses. The last 2 have been absolutely heartbreaking. Overtime loss to Beast of the East. They led by 5 in the final minute. Fareed Redmond hits a 27-foot pull-up 3 at the buzzer. Then it's just the right show in the afternoon of overtime there to finish it off. And then last night, miraculous rally. Nathan Zilberman actually got going. He wasn't that good in the Beast loss. And then just a terrible foul by Keontae Smith. There's no argument on that. That was a clear foul. A terrible one, and the worst part of that foul is that Atlantis had gone back into that game with some really good defense and actually forcing Lorenzo Phenom to be an ISO paint guy, which is something that he's strangely wanted to do a lot, and he's not good at it. He's just not a good post player. He's just not. He had a couple fadeaways late in that game that were off the front rim. He's inefficient as a post creator. And all they had to do was go straight up. That's all they had to do. They had made the Bad Boys offense very singular, right? It was Baugus driving through contact and not making it. It was Phenom trying to get through contact and not making it. If they had stayed vertical, no issues. Instead, they don't, and issues. But they get bailed out by that foul. Bad Boys does indeed. This isn't a hot take. It's barely a take, but at the end of the day, Atlantis is who they are. They got back into the picture with a 4-game winning streak. They're falling back out of it with a 4-game losing streak. They're a team that lacks a consistent, cutthroat, end-of-game score. Blaine Kidd is too inconsistent. He was barely a factor in this game. I think he took 8 shots. Theophilus Hilton was really great. He got more run. They lose that Beast game because he didn't play more. He should have played more in that game. But the reason Atlantis got back in this game and was in this game in general, they got back because of Zilberman, but they were in this within striking distance because of Hilton. He's now got 3 straight games of 24-plus points. Interestingly enough, they're 0-3 in those 3 games. But we're not blaming him for it. The fact is Atlantis' roster isn't deep enough behind him. They have some good pieces, but they don't have overwhelmingly the type of depth that is needed to win. It's remediable, but it's not something that's going to be, fixed this season. It's going to take, I'm not trying to sway coaches into, or organizations, but you know what this team could really use is a Tim Pilardi, because he's doing some great things with Latin America. They've looked good in their closing kind of ceremonies of games. They need a coach here that understands the talent, that knows how to get the best out of the talent, but that can also bring in new talent. I don't think the talent that's on this roster as it stands currently is good enough to do anything more than be 500, and that's been indicative of what they've been all season. At or below, they get above it with that 4-game winner. They get below it now with a 4-game loser. They're not out of it, but they've blown 2 chances against teams that they needed wins against, and they, you could have erased some of the sting of that Beast loss by beating Bad Boys, and you were 8 seconds, well, you were 2 seconds away from it. They don't get it done. The impressive part of this is that Atlantis, they come off that after that game against Beast. You wouldn't have been surprised. It wouldn't have been understandable had they folded and lost that game. But they didn't. They came out with energy. They were in this game, and they had a chance to win it at the end. This isn't time for moral victories. It's moral victories for teams like Latin America that are trying to put together some confidence boosts here towards the end of the season. It's not a time for a moral victory for Atlantis, but at least they got up and came out. And I'm not advocating, as I said earlier, for a coaching change. I'm just saying that's the type of coaching personality that they need is getting guys to develop. But what they clearly have as an organization is a group that feels confident that they can rally back, and they clearly have one another's back for that. That's great, but they're not winning games because the talent isn't there and it hasn't been developed as such. The big loser of this game, though, is everybody else that's behind them. It's Indy, it's Philadelphia who won, who we'll get to briefly in a moment. It's Lakeshore Drive, it's Europe, it's the teams that were below, it's Cascadia that needed Atlantis to win this game to keep that 8 seed within reach, and now it's not. It's fading. Philadelphia's win, albeit great against DMV, is basically moot at this point. Indy Stripes, they've won 2 in a row. It's kind of moot at this point. Lakeshore Drive, they had the big win. It doesn't matter because Bad Boys wins. They've won 2 in a row now. So Atlantis is a huge loser because they have a 4-game losing streak. The rest of that 9 through 14 group, those 5 teams, or 6 teams, are even bigger losers because now all the work they're trying to do. And here's the thing, I don't feel bad for you. I don't feel bad for you. Win games, man. Win games throughout the season. You don't put yourself in this situation where you're reliant on others. So all these teams, I've said this for weeks, the 10 through or the 11 through 14, they were out of it 3 weeks ago. It wasn't mathematical. It was just logistical. They needed so many things to happen, and this is the type of stuff that negates all those things from happening. For a team like Indy, yeah, you win some games. You say you're 2 games back. There's 4 games to play. Mathematically, we're in it. Then games like this happen, and even if you flip the results, games like this could happen. If Atlantis had won, you don't really make any headway if you're an Indy Stripes team. So it's just incredibly difficult to get in, but Atlantis is proving that they just don't have the depth to actually get there. Let's go to the positive side. Yacht Club, they've won 6 straight. No one seems to be talking about it. That's one of those things that it's shocking. Nobody seems to be talking about Yacht Club. They've won 6 in a row. They've all but secured and clinched a playoff spot. They are 3.5 games up, I think, with 4 games to play. I love what they're doing, playing Adam Max and Tyshawn Easom together. They're getting big minutes to other bigs in that rotation, and that's helped out because in this 6-game winning streak, they've held opponents to 62 points or less in 5 of them. So their offense is okay. Dominic Bianco continues to be the number 1 guy. I'll remind you, he's probably the most inefficient star player that we have in SimWorld Hoops, but he's capable of having a big night. Adam Max has had some big nights. Jay Laster is a great shooter. They have been using their offense to survive. They are building this run off of great defense. They're going to get in. They're going to be a problem child because, as I said on an earlier podcast, those 3, Max, Bianco, Laster, offer the type of things that can cause trouble for a top team. The way Bay Area is playing, they just lost 2 in a row. That's our 2-7 matchup right now. You've got a team that's coming in confident, and you got a team that might be coming in on their heels. That's a dangerous recipe, man. That's a dangerous recipe. Yacht Club should be considered a very, very deep dark horse, but a very dangerous dark horse for the race to 1. Last thing, quickly on DMV. We said on last week's pod, Nick Hugo was 7-1 in games in which he takes double-figure shots, and on cue, he shot 12 times last night, and they lost to Philadelphia. That, however, is not why they lost. Nick Hugo was inefficient as a scorer, but he did a lot of things on both ends that helped them be in a position to potentially win this game. They didn't win because they went ice cold from deep. 8 of 22. They started this game 4 of 5, so they went 4 and 17 the rest of the way. So they were on their season average for makes, which was just over 8, well below their season average for percentage, which is above 42. I don't hit the panic button. I think DMV, because of their coach, because of the fact that they do typically have a really great offense. Let's give some credit here to the Philadelphia defense. They did a phenomenal job of taking DMV out of rhythm. They didn't have a lot of open threes. It's not like they were clanging wide open shots. They were missing contested ones. But this loss underscores that they are reliant on everybody playing their role perfectly. They are reliant on Trey Trust being slightly high volume but good shooter. They are reliant on Nick Hugo disrupting the game inside. They are reliant on Brandon Smith hitting multiple threes at a high efficiency. That didn't happen. And when that's the case, again, we'll say it many times because we're going to get an upset in the first round. We're going to, because it's a single elimination tournament. It's just like March Madness. You don't see 1 through 8 advancing every single time, even if in 7 of 8 situations they're probably the better team at the higher seed, with the one better team being the higher seed, being the 8-9 maybe the 7-10. But for the most part, the higher seeds should advance, but they don't, because it's single elimination. So DMV could make a run. They're the type of team that I would be not shocked at all if they win it all, and not shocked at all if they're bumped in the first round. They have the pieces to go deep. It's just a matter of what they're going to turn in. And against an Philadelphia team that was desperate, they didn't show up. And that's unfortunately where they're going to be sitting now. Is, they had a chance to try to chase down Beasts of the East. Instead, they're now dealing with Beyond the Arch on their tail. So big weeks ahead, though. We are basically all under 5 games left. Games start mattering now, like they have previously, but even more so. Playoff positioning is up at stake. The race for the final 8 seed, though, in the Legacy Conference is what is worth keeping an eye on. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you on Monday.